Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. We have a very exciting preview and prediction video to get through. It's Carlos Alcaraz versus Lorenzo Musetti for the fourth round matchup at Roland Garros 2023. We're going to break it down in a few ways. I'm going to try and keep this one a bit shorter than usual, just to keep you guys nice and engaged, of course. Before we get into it, though, remember to hit that like button. Do subscribe if you are new, and do leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. For our YouTube subscribers and especially our members, we really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a quick rundown at their matches so far. Then I will talk about their head-to-head, and mainly what I'm going to do is focus on the Hamburg victory that Musetti had over Alcaraz last year, and then ultimately I'll give you guys my prediction. So, and when I give you guys my prediction, I'll give you what to look out for as well in the match, how I think things will probably unfold. So for Alcaraz, it's been pretty, I would say, smooth sailing. Let's say beating Koboli and then Daniel and then Shapovalov in straight sets, 4 sets, and then 3 sets respectively. The Taro Daniel one, he dropped a set. And Alcaraz, as we know, is prone to dropping his level at times against Shapovalov. He was 4-2 down in the second set. Shapovalov, I would say, definitely bottled it. Was serving for 5-2. Alcaraz came back, courtesy of some Shapovalov errors. But all in all, pretty comfortable for the world number one. For Musetti, he's been pretty impressive, I think. Beat Ima in straight sets, Shevchenko, who has been in really good form, and Nori dismantled him in straight sets very comfortably. So some really good victories for him, in my opinion. He's been looking pretty good. Of course, on top of that, he beat Novak Djokovic in Rome. Looked pretty good there as well. Beat him in Monte Carlo, even, which I thought was a very, very impressive victory to say the least. So, where does that leave us in terms of the head-to-head? Because that's what I really want to look at. Now, in terms of the head-to-head, Alcaraz and Musetti have played each other twice, both times on clay. Once was in 2020. We're going to ignore that. And the reason why is because it was just so long ago. Both players are completely different to the type of player they were 2 years ago. Last year, though, in July, they played in Hamburg in the final. Alcaraz lost 4-6, 7. Sorry, lost 6-4, 6-7, 6-4. Now, the only set he took was a tiebreaker in the second set. He won that tiebreaker 8-6. He was on the back foot throughout. Musetti put on a masterclass on how to defeat Alcaraz. Now, that was a best-of-3 match. Alcaraz, you could say, probably wasn't playing his best tennis. I don't think that's a stretch to say that. But Musetti has real weapons and a style of play that is definitely going to be troublesome in some aspects for Alcaraz. Does that mean that he's going to win or he's going to beat Alcaraz in straight sets? I'm not necessarily saying that. What I am saying, though, is that I think we're going to get an entertaining matchup where we should see a competitive match on our hands. That's for sure. Okay, so what did Musetti do against Alcaraz in Hamburg that gave him the victory, and what could potentially help him in this match? Well, I think the biggest thing that we've seen in the past from Alcaraz is the backhand to backhand exchanges and defending that backhand corner, that ad corner. Against 95% of players, he can get through that unscathed, or he can even boss it at times against players. With a few players, and if you think about it, some of them are lefties. Nadal, Nori makes sense, right? Forehand going cross court into the backhand of Alcaraz. He's had issues with them in the past. Then, if we talk about the elite backhands for righties, Djokovic, Zverev, Sinner, Musetti. Those were a few of his losses from last year. Musetti has arguably the best, if not one of the best, one-handed backhands on tour. And the one thing that I would say is, if this was a match on any other surface other than clay, I don't think we would be as excited for this match. And I think Alcaraz would win pretty comfortably, in my opinion. But because it's on clay and because of Musetti's game, I do think it gives him a really, really good opportunity to push Alcaraz. And one of those areas will be the backhand to backhand. I do think he'll be able to win his fair share of points behind his one-hander. And I do think Alcaraz, even though he has improved his backhand defense, I do think it is much improved. Not only is it something which he solved and beat Yannick Sinner with after losing to him twice last year at the US Open. In the end, he managed to defend beautifully and solve that puzzle. He's improved, right, in all aspects of his game since that match. Now, what Musetti, though, is going to have, which Sinner didn't have on the hard courts of the US Open, and also with his one-hander as well, I think, which is an advantage, is the ability to use and find more angles on this clay court, which will force Alcaraz to have to hit more backhands. And the reason why I say that is because on clay, there's a few aspects. And the first one is, of course, the slowness of the surface. Now, because it's a slower surface, it means a lot of players are able to hit more forehands. Now, more likely than not, we're going to see Alcaraz try and commit to hitting more forehands than he would on other surfaces. Same even for Musetti. We might see him open up on the forehand, going into in or into out. There's interesting stats that show that Musetti on a clay court hits his forehand with more RPM, so more topspin than Alcaraz, and that is a real positive, of course, on the clay. And same with his backhand as well as one hand in comparison to Alcaraz's backhand. Now, what that means is that Musetti is going to be able to find better angles because of the higher topspin rate. And not only is he going to be able to find better angles, but he's going to be able to potentially drag Alcaraz out more, especially in those backhand exchanges. And where Alcaraz will have and would normally expect to be able to run around the backhand and go into in or into out on the forehand, he's going to have to hit more backhands than he's used to against Musetti because of that factor. That's a real positive for Musetti because not only does he have a really good one-hander, but his backhand down the line is very good. And if he manages to open up the court, even someone as good as Alcaraz is at defending his forehand corner, Musetti's backhand line is something special. And if he manages to open up and get a lot of opportunities to attack with that shot, Alcaraz will be in trouble. And that would open up, of course, with that backhand to backhand exchange. So that's one factor to cater, and that is one of the biggest factors in Hamburg is that he bossed the backhand to backhand exchanges, and with the forehand to forehand, he actually held his own, and he out-hit Alcaraz from the back of the court. The other thing he did is he's got great movement on the clay. Alcaraz won some points with the drop shot, but he chased down a lot of them. He's also got a good drop shot of his own, so he would push Alcaraz back and utilize it himself. So he used Alcaraz's game against him. And Alcaraz coming to the net, Musetti is actually quite good at picking players off of the net with really innovative ways of passing them, whether it's with great ground strokes to pass them or lobs. So Musetti is the type of player that he has a little bit of everything, in my opinion, from the back of the court in terms of tool bag as well. The one thing I will say, though, is that defensively, he's not the best. And I think as the rallies get longer and longer, I don't necessarily think Musetti is going to come out on top. I think on clay, his shot tolerance is a lot higher than it is on other surfaces. And the one thing that he might be looking out for, and I think I've seen from Alcaraz throughout this clay court swing and also in prior months, is that he can have very inconsistent forehand days. And even it can be inconsistent throughout a set. Like the level of quality of his forehand can really fluctuate set to set. Musetti's forehand is actually a real weapon, and I do think Musetti could unsettle Alcaraz's rhythm with the way that he plays. He also slices the backhand occasionally, even on the clay. It's a pretty good slice. But the biggest thing I think we're going to find is that Musetti has good variation on how much topspin, how much height he puts on his forehand and backhand, good angles found as well. And he'll try and make it uncomfortable for Alcaraz, and he'll try and put him on the back foot. Alcaraz will try and serve and volley, of course, as well, or at least transition and come to the net. And that's when Musetti because he's got such a strong backhand, it will also be a factor for Alcaraz to think about because he'll think of whether to approach the forehand or backhand because both wings Musetti could potentially hurt him with. He might be more hesitant to come forward. So those are a few of the factors to look out for. And that's why I do think it could be quite an evenly balanced matchup. The serve return dynamic's interesting. Alcaraz has continually improved his serve. If Musetti serves like he did against Djokovic in Monte Carlo, he will have a pretty good chance of winning this. He does not necessarily have the most consistent serve, though. He needs to hit his spots. He needs to hit a high percentage of first serves in. And what he needs to do and what he did against Djokovic and what he did against Alcaraz in this match in Hamburg was back it up with big, big +1 plays. With the forehand, especially. And if it has to be a backhand, then a backhand. But he needs to be on the front foot from point one on his serve. Otherwise, Alcaraz will make him pay. He really will. Now, Alcaraz's returning on clay is obviously exemplified by the fact that it's a lot slower, the surface. But he does also hit some, you could argue, slightly safer returns on clay as well because he knows that he's able to potentially grind out points or he doesn't necessarily need to attack as much on the clay. And that means he might err on the more cautious side to avoid making more errors. So we'll see how that pans out. Alcaraz's serve is much improved, as I said. He's hitting his spots a bit better. But the kick serve to Musetti's backhand, he won't mind as much. I feel like that is something that against someone like Tsitsipas, who he could potentially play in the quarterfinals if he beats Musetti, will be very useful. Against Musetti, I don't think he minds as much, to be honest with you. So it'll be interesting to see how that serve return dynamic does unfold. You'd imagine Alcaraz has a slight edge there, in all honesty. But let's see how it unfolds. But something to look out for is the backhand to backhand. That's the real key exchange for me, and how that one develops. So keep an eye out for that. In terms of prediction and how I think it's going to unfold, I do think it's got 4 or 5 sets written all over it. In my opinion, I don't think it's going to be a straight set victory. I think I'd be remiss to to look away from Alcaraz, but I could see Musetti causing an upset. The real question is, can Musetti play the level that he played against Djokovic in Monte Carlo this year or last year against Hamburg for 3 straight sets? I'm not so sure. And that's where my issues really lie with Musetti because he's got the talent. Does he have the consistency and the stamina to play at that level for 3 sets in a match? Not so sure. I'm going to go with Carlos Alcaraz, and I'm going to go for Alcaraz in 5 sets. I think it's going to be a real, real good match, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Let me know your predictions in the comment section below. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you on the next video.